Welcome to USA Stories channel that we hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. Have you ever stumbled across something you weren't supposed to, something so unexpected? It leaves you questioning everything you thought you knew. Well, that's exactly what happened to me when I accidentally discovered what my sister Amelia had been hiding under her bed for 10 years. It all started on a lazy Saturday afternoon, the kind of day where you're just wandering around the house, not really doing anything important. I was in her room looking for something when I noticed the dust gathering along the edges of her bed frame. I'd been in there 99 of times before, but something felt different. This time curiosity got the best of me, and without thinking, I knelt down and packed under the bed. At first I didn't see anything out of the ordinary, just the usual clutter, old shoes, forgotten toys, and a few random pieces of clothing. But then something caught my eye. A small box pushed way back into the corner. It wasn't a box I recognized, and it definitely wasn't something I'd seen her use before. My heart started to race, and my mind went into overdrive. What was in there? Why was it hidden so carefully? I told myself not to look. I tried to ignore the urge, but the curiosity kept nagging at me. What if it was something important, something that had been secret for years? Before this story spirals even further, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications for more. And when the story ends, don't forget to show your support through likes and comments. After a moment of hesitation, I reached for the box and pulled it out, my hands shaking just a little as I opened it. I couldn't believe what I saw. It was like stepping into a world I wasn't supposed to know. The contents made no sense. My sister Amelia, the person I thought I knew better than anyone, had been hiding something so strange, so bizarre. It left me speechless. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Why would she keep this from me? Why under her bed of all places? I thought about confronting her right away, but a part of me didn't want to. What if there was a reason she kept this hidden? Was it something personal, something painful? Or was it simply something I could never understand? As I held that box in my hands, I had a sinking feeling in my stomach. I knew this discovery wasn't the end of a story. It was just the beginning of something that would change everything. The questions swirling in my mind multiplied. What else had she been hiding all these years, and why? I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a secret that wasn't meant to be uncovered. But then again, there was no going back. The mystery was already unfolding, and I was about to find out far more than I ever expected. But the question still lingered. Was I ready for what was coming next? Stay tuned, because this is only the beginning of what turned out to be a shocking revelation I never saw coming. As I sat there staring at the box, I couldn't help but think back to everything I knew about my sister Amelia Isabella. We'd grown up together in the same small house, shared the same childhood memories, and yet I'd never seen anything like this before. Isabella had always been the quiet, reserved one, while I'd been the outgoing social type. She had always kept to herself, spending hours in her room with her books, or working on her art. But she wasn't the type to keep big secrets. At least that's what I had always thought growing up. We were always close, or at least I thought we were. We had our fights, sure, what siblings didn't. But deep down, I always believed we could trust each other with anything. That's why when I found the box, I felt betrayed in some way. I didn't know what it meant, but something inside me whispered that it was important. There had to be a reason she hid it. But what was she hiding exactly? I had tried to push it out of my mind. After all, maybe it wasn't as big a deal as I was making it out to be. Maybe it was just something silly, a memory, or something personal that she never felt the need to share. But the more I thought about it, the more questions piled up. Why hadn't she ever mentioned it? And why was it tucked away, so carefully under her bed, hidden from everyone, even me? It wasn't long before I began to recall the little things, the way Isabella had acted over the years, like there was always something she wasn't saying, the way she avoided certain topics when they came up. There were times when I tried to talk to her about our past, about things we'd gone through together, but she would change the subject, or just shut down. And then there was that one night a few months ago when I found her in the garage looking through old family albums. She'd been staring at one picture for what felt like forever, her face pale and distant. When I asked her about it, she quickly brushed me off, saying she was just tired. The more I thought about it, the more everything started to add up, but in a way that only raised more questions. I'd always thought of her as the normal one, the one who had everything together. So why was she hiding something in the first place? What could possibly be so bad, so important that she would go to such lengths to keep it a secret? I shook my head, feeling the weight of the situation settle in. I knew I couldn't keep this to myself much longer. I had to talk to her, but what if she got upset? What if she didn't want me to know? Would I be intruding on something I wasn't supposed to understand? I stared at the box for a long time, my thoughts racing. I knew that whatever was inside it was only the beginning. The questions kept mounting, but none of the answers were within reach. For now, I had no choice but to wait and hoped that someday Isabella would tell me the truth. The next few days felt like they dragged on forever. Every time I saw Isabella, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She was acting more distant than usual, like she was purposely avoiding me. We hadn't had a real conversation since I found the box, and that silence between us was deafening. Every little interaction felt charged, like she knew I knew something but wasn't ready to confront it. I tried to focus on other things, work, my friends, distractions, but my mind kept drifting back to the box. I couldn't help but wonder what it meant. What could it possibly hold that would explain the strange behavior I had started to notice? Isabella wasn't the type to just change overnight, yet something clearly had. Then a couple of nights later, I overheard something that made my blood run cold. I was passing by her room when I heard her talking to someone on the phone. At first I couldn't catch all the words, but then I heard her mention my name. I don't know how much longer I can keep this from her. It's getting harder, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I froze in place, my heart pounding. Who was she talking to? What was she keeping from me? The conversation continued, but I couldn't make out the rest. All I knew was that it wasn't the first time I'd heard her mention keeping secrets, and this time it felt like the stakes were higher. Whoever was on the other end of that phone call seemed to be someone important, someone Isabella trusted enough to confide in, yet still kept me in the dark. My gut told me that this wasn't just some random secret. It felt bigger, something that had been building up over time. But what could it be? And why was she carrying this burden alone? The weight of it all was starting to consume me. The more I learned, the less I understood, and the more it felt like the truth was slipping farther out of reach. I needed answers, but how far was I willing to go to get them? I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd overheard, the secrecy, the tension. Isabella had been hiding something from me, something far bigger than I ever imagined. But the more I turned it over in my head, the more desperate I became for answers. I knew I couldn't just wait for her to come to me. I had to confront her, but how could I do that without pushing her away? What if she was hiding something painful, something she didn't want anyone to know? The next day I saw her sitting at the kitchen table, looking out the window like she was lost in thought for a moment. I almost convinced myself to just let it go, to leave her space, and let her tell me when she was ready. But then the image of that box flashed in my mind, and the need to know consumed me. I couldn't stand the idea of not knowing what was going on in her life, especially if it was something that involved me. I walked up to her, my heart racing. "Isabella," I said, my voice shaky, "there's something I need to ask you." She looked up at me, her eyes wide, but there was no warmth in them. It was like a wall had gone up between us, and I could almost feel the distance growing with each passing second. "What is it?" she asked quietly, but I could tell she was bracing herself for what was coming. I hesitated, unsure how to even begin. "It's about what's under your bed, the box, what's inside it." Her face went pale, and she quickly looked away. A nervous laugh escaped her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. Don't know what you mean." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken tension. My pulse quickened. This wasn't going to be easy, but I had to know. I saw it. Isabella and I need to know the truth. For a moment there was silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "You don't understand. It's not what you think." I held my breath, my heart thudded in my C*******T. What was she about to say? I waited, my heart pounding in my ears. Isabella's words hung in the air, but they didn't make sense. "It's not what you think." What could she possibly mean by that? I felt like I was standing on the edge of something, and the more I pushed, the deeper I was falling. But I couldn't stop myself. I had to know, I had to understand what was happening. "Isabella, please," I said, my voice soft but urgent. "You don't have to hide it from me. We're family. Just tell me." She glanced up at me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. Fear, regret, There was a brief flicker of hesitation before she took a deep breath, as if preparing herself for something that she didn't want to face. I could feel the tension building thick in the air between us, like a storm waiting to break. "I never wanted you to find out," she said quietly, "but I guess there's no hiding it now." My mind raced as I waited for her to continue, but she just stared at me, her face pale and tight with the weight of whatever she was about to confess. Then slowly she stood up and walked towards the hallway. "Come with me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll show you." I followed her, my every step echoing in the silence of the house. My pulse quickened with each passing second. Where was this going? What was she about to reveal? When we reached her room, she walked straight to the bed, bending down to pull out the box from underneath. She hesitated before handing it to me, her hands trembling slightly. It felt heavier than before. I stared at it, my hands now trembling too. This was the moment that would change everything. But just as I reached for the box, I heard a knock on the door, a loud, sharp knock that seemed to freeze the room in place. My head snapped toward the door and I saw Isabella's face. Blanche. She didn't move, she didn't speak. The knock came again, louder this time. "Isabella," I began, my voice thick with confusion. She didn't respond. Instead, she quickly shoved the box back under the bed, her eyes wide with panic. "Don't answer it," she whispered, her voice frantic. "Please just don't answer it." I stared at her, unsure of what to do. The knock came once more, followed by a voice, someone I didn't recognize. "Isabella, open up. It's time to talk." My stomach twisted. Who was that? Why was Isabella so terrified? "Who is that?" I asked, my voice shaking. She looked at me, her expression torn between fear and guilt. "I can't tell you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Not yet. I stood frozen, unsure whether to press Isabella for answers or listen to her warning. The knock came again, more insistent this time, and Isabella's face twisted with fear. It was clear she wasn't ready to confront whatever was on the other side of that door, but I couldn't help myself. Something was wrong, the mystery of the box, her silence, the panic in her eyes. Everything was leading to this moment. I stepped forward, my hand gripping the door handle before Isabella could stop me. "Who is it?" I demanded, my voice firm, despite the rising dread in my C*******T. The door swung open, revealing a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, wearing a dark coat and a look of urgency in his eyes. He glanced at me briefly, then locked eyes with Isabella, his gaze sharp and calculating. His presence in the doorway felt like the weight of a 990. Unspoken things pressing down on me. "Isabella, we need to talk," he said, his voice calm, but with an underlying edge that sent chills down my spine. Isabella stepped back, panic flashing across her face. "No," she whispered, almost pleading, "you're not supposed to be here." I turned to her, confusion clouding my mind. "What is this? Who is he?" Before she could answer, the man pushed past me, stepping into the room with an air of authority. "I'm sorry, but there's no time for explanations," he said, his voice cold. "We've been looking for that box for years. It's time for the truth." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Looking for the box? What do you mean?" Isabella looked at me, her face full of regret. "I didn't want you to get involved in this," she said, her voice trembling, "but I never had a choice." The man nodded, his expression hardening. "It's true. Isabella has been keeping this secret for a long time, but it's bigger than both of you now. The box contains something that could change everything. The information inside it isn't just a part of your past. It's part of something much darker." I stared at the three of them, struggling to piece it together. What's in the box? What could be so dangerous? Isabella hesitated, her eyes darting nervously between the man and me. Then she turned to face him, her voice shaking with a sudden burst of defiance. "You won't get it, not now, not from me." But the man smiled grimly, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. "You don't have a choice," he said. "It's already in motion. The people who want that box are closer than you think, and they've been watching you all along." As the realization hit me, my world seemed to shift on its axis. The box wasn't just a secret. It was the key to something much bigger, something that could put all of us in danger. But then, just as I thought I understood, a new voice interrupted from the hallway. "We found her." The words sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just about the box anymore, it was about survival. The voice from the hallway sent a surge of panic through me, and for a moment everything went still. Isabella's face drained of color, and even the man who had just entered seemed to tense, his expression darkening. "No," he muttered under his breath. "Not now." The door creaked open wider, and another figure appeared, this time a woman dressed in black and carrying an air of authority. She was calm, too calm as she stepped into the room, her eyes quickly scanning all of us. My heart raced as she looked at Isabella, a thin smile crossing her lips. "It's time," she said, her voice smooth and calculating. "You can't hide anymore." I turned to Isabella. Confusion flooding my mind. What is going on? Who are these people? What's in the box? Isabella swallowed hard, her eyes filled with regret. "It's the truth I've been running from for years. Everything I've kept hidden. It's all connected, my life, your life, all of it." The woman took a step forward, her gaze fixed on Isabella. "The box holds evidence. Isabella, the kind of evidence that can change everything. People who will stop at nothing to get it are closing in on us. It's not just a memory. It's a key to understanding, something much bigger, much darker than we ever knew." I looked at Isabella, struggling to understand, but what does it have to do with me? She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You were always meant to know. I didn't want to involve you, but now it's out of my hands." Suddenly the man who had first entered the room stepped forward, his voice steady but urgent. "We don't have much time, they're coming. You need to decide, Isabella, now. Without warning." Isabella turned to the bed and grabbed the box, holding it out to me. "You're the one who has to keep it safe. I can't protect it anymore." I hesitated, my mind racing with a million questions. Who were these people? What was in the box? And most importantly, could I really protect it, knowing how dangerous it was? Before I could answer, the door slammed open and another figure stepped in. This time I didn't need an introduction. I knew instantly. It was someone I never thought I'd see again. "Someone from my past. Give it to me," the figure said coldly. The room seemed to freeze. My thoughts were a blur. The stakes had never been higher, and just like that, I knew the real battle had just. If you enjoyed this suspenseful story and want to hear more, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more thrilling content.